can you really tell when someone is lying? When they're exaggerating? Even when they're joking? How sure are you about those things? How certain can you be of someone's sincerity? What defences do you have to prevent you from being swindled or taken advantage of? In advertising, in the news, and in everyday conversation, we massage the truth for both selfish and noble reasons. Some do it for personal gain, others to avoid punishment, and most of us will readily tell a white lie to spare someone's feelings. As a society, we primarily communicate using words, but beyond spoken and written words, we use a myriad of non-verbal communication methods to convey meaning, to enhance or change the meaning of the words we use. Non-verbal signals can transform a simple statement into a joke, a promise, or a threat. Many will say that the trick to successfully deceiving someone is not to lie to them at all. Advertisers and politicians are experts at this. Part of their daily job is convincing people of one so-called truth whilst drawing their attention away from another. They rely on trust to succeed. So to preserve that trust, they must allow us to make the mistake ourselves, so that they can legitimately claim to have been in the right. If they cannot avoid a question altogether, one of the most powerful of those tools is playing to our own confirmation bias. In Return of the Jedi, Luke Skywalker challenged the Force ghost of Obi-Wan Kenobi after learning that Darth Vader was his father.
Why didn't you tell me? You told me Vader betrayed and murdered my father.
Your father was seduced by the dark side of the Force. He ceased to be Anakin Skywalker and became Darth Vader. When that happened, the good man who was your father was destroyed. So what I told you was true, from a certain point of view.
Back in the original Star Wars film that we now know as A New Hope, Obi-Wan specifically told Luke his father had been a heroic Jedi Knight who was killed by Darth Vader, knowing that it would match with Luke's desire to be more than just a farm boy. If he had bluntly and openly told Luke that his father was the most feared man in the evil empire and he'd later have to face him in one-on-one combat, he may not have followed Obi-Wan on his adventures. By confirming that he was the son of a war hero and describing his father's adoption of the Darth Vader identity as having been killed by it, he gave Luke the motivation he needed. Was he telling the truth? Partially. But was he lying? Not strictly speaking. Did Luke choose to question him previously? No. He was happy in his comfortable worldview until the literal truth was finally revealed to him. When trying to deceive, recognizing the triggers or the biases of the people you wish to influence provides you with a tool to convince them. Pander to these, and you're part of the way there. It's in the pandering part that the more conventional communication skills come into play. If we play the part of a sympathetic soul, someone who shares the same ideals, preconceptions or concerns as our target, we stand a much better chance of them buying into our falsehood. When we convince them well enough, we can even start to change their minds towards believing part or all of our own personal agenda is also theirs. Obi-Wan didn't need to use Jedi mind tricks to convince Luke to follow him, because Luke's own confirmation bias did that for him. Body language has received a great deal of attention from many would-be trainers in deception. Whilst they can be considered separately, facial expressions are an aspect of body language too. People using sign language also use body language and facial expression as a conscious part of their communication, and anyone who's not used to it may sometimes see it as quite exaggerated. Like tone of voice, it adds to the emotional content of what they're saying to each other. Just as speaking people convey humour, sarcasm, anger or sadness primarily through their voices, as well as their words, someone signing can give context to their words using additional visual signals. Hearing people too also use body language, though without tone of voice to support their communication, body movement and facial expression take on a bigger role in signing. Physical communication has been researched for decades to find which of these expressions of emotion are inherent and which are learned. Most people are aware that specific gestures have different meanings in different parts of the world, and that something which is considered the height of bad manners in country A may be meaningless or even a compliment in country B. Studies on infants have identified that a great deal of what we both express and react to in terms of body language and expression is born with us. Laughter and smiling are universal. Crying and sadness look the same wherever you come from, and a scared or confused person will always be easy to spot. The research has also shown that many of the expressions that point to the feelings of others are barely perceptible, so much so that we call them micro-expressions. It's these tiny, easy-to-miss expressions that signal, often unconsciously, that we're being dishonest. Police investigators and military interrogators are specially trained in spotting micro-expressions. A tiny flicker of the eyes, an easy-to-miss curling of the lip, a change in the pace of someone's breathing, signalling stress, are all things they'll be looking for. People who have become expert at it are lauded as human lie detectors. Of course, some people don't need special training to do the same and have learned these skills naturally. Still more live in the false belief that they have such skills, but by their track records, they clearly don't. Tone of voice, the way we modulate our voices, and the pace of our speech conveys powerful signals too. One of the greatest challenges in voice synthesis has been accurately mimicking the intonation of human voices to convincingly convey emotion artificially. However, if you sound convincing enough on the radio or on the end of a telephone, you can still hoodwink a sizable amount of people. In 1938, America was famously brought to a halt by Orson Welles' radio adaptations of H.G. Wells' The War of the Worlds. It was so convincing, despite the lack of flashing lights in the sky, sounds of distant conflict outside, or other radio stations covering the fictional attack from the skies, the radio dramatisation was so sincerely produced, it caused panic. Whilst that's not likely today, we still see hundreds of thousands of people every year losing their life savings to conmen, who telephone them claiming to be from their bank, the police, their internet provider, or some arm of government. A combination of not only the right words, but knowing how to say them to sound honest and convincing, has seen victims hand over tens of thousands of pounds or dollars in just a few moments on the phone. That's gone even further with the proliferation of the internet and phishing emails. There are few amongst us who haven't at some point received an email supposedly from a fugitive prince or general in a far-off land who promises riches untold if we can only help them pay the fees to unlock their high-security bank account. Or how about the secret naughty video taken on your laptop's webcam that will be emailed to all your friends if you should fail to meet the sender's demands? There are so many signals within human communication that most of us take for granted. The more signals we receive, the more confident we feel of knowing whether or not to trust someone. Arguably, the less information we receive, the less likely we are to invest our trust. We think of the people who fall for phishing emails as being more gullible than those who are the victims of face-to-face scammers, because the tools used to convince them are so crude in comparison. Our decisions on whether someone is trustworthy are directly proportionate to the quantity and quality of the signals we perceive as being honest. Skilled conmen, actors, salesmen and politicians work very hard to learn and use these signals to gain our confidence. Our judgments on someone's dishonesty are not just based on signals that signify lying, but an absence of honesty signals. When we're trying to judge someone's intent, we may look out for direct signals like hand-wringing, fidgeting, and stilted speech. We're also on the lookout for indirect signals like a lack of eye contact, blank facial expressions, or monotone voices. How does all this relate to autism, you may ask? Think about how I just described the signals we look for to identify someone being dishonest. Fidgeting? Most autistic people need to physically stim to modulate concentration and emotion. It looks a lot like fidgeting, and hand-wringing or finger tapping is a common stim too. Stilted speech? Many autistic people find one-to-one communication difficult, and may be apt to stumble on their words or repeat phrases to be sure they've said them correctly. Lack of eye contact? Well, difficulty making eye contact is so common, it's used by diagnosticians to help identify autistic people. Blank or serious expressions? Monotone voices? Again, these are so common in autistic people, they've become a cliche. Many of the signals that everyday people use to identify deception are normal behaviour for autistic people, no matter what we're trying to say or how honest we're being. You'd be hard-pressed to find anyone on the spectrum who hasn't been called a liar when they're being 100% truthful. Most are also used to being accused of exaggeration, of not listening, being uncaring, or of being stubborn, for many of the same reasons. Ordinary body language signals that you're used to simply don't apply to most autistic people. It's not something we can all learn either, not without tremendous cost to our well-being. Some of us have learned to fake it pretty well, as we described when we talked about masking in a previous video. But consciously pretending to be something you are not 24/7 is unsustainable. Even when we're masquerading to make life easier for non-autistic people, you'd find it difficult to tell the difference between an autistic person telling you a heartfelt truth from feeding you a stream of lies and deception. When we're not masking, the body language, facial expressions, eye contact and tone of voice would be so similar you'd find it even harder, or just assume, as many do, that we're always lying. There is another side to this coin though. Research has started to show what many of us have known for a very long time. Autistic people find it easier to understand other autistic people, and neurotypical people find it easier to relate to other neurotypical people. But mix the two together and miscommunication increases exponentially. Our natural methods of nonverbal communication are not the same. Autistic people are often not well versed in recognising the signals that non-autistic people look for to identify honesty. The aversion many of us share towards eye contact means we often don't look at them closely enough to learn those signals in the first place. Combine this with differences in the way our senses work that can make them more or less sensitive than the average, and you have someone who not only acts differently, but reacts differently too. Being unable to instinctively recognise neurotypical signals of deception, aggression or selfishness has led to many of us being taken advantage of when we're young, and for some of us well into adult life too. Whilst some will remain vulnerable to manipulation, many have become accustomed to being mistreated, and it has made us wary. We may start out easily fooled when we're young, but we learn from it. We can become inherently suspicious of others after a lifetime of disappointment and hurt. We build emotional ramparts to protect ourselves from the cruelties of past experience. Anxiety and depression can be constant companions for autistic adults, which has led to suicide being the second highest cause of death in the adult autistic population behind heart disease. More than lung disease, more than accidents, more than cancer. Modern life is a maze of deception, from emotional manipulation in adverts to lawyers defending people they know to be guilty who themselves lie under oath. From reading between the lines in everyday conversation or telling your friend their terrible food is delicious, to politicians making empty promises they know they have no intention of fulfilling. How many times do people answer the casual question of, "How are you?" with "Fine," when they're actually being torn apart inside? Faced with these odds and the steep communication difficulties we have with non-autistic people, a huge proportion of us have given up on deception altogether. We have chosen 100% honesty. It means we can be blunt sometimes, but if we're not going to be believed anyway, what have we to lose? If we try to lie to spare someone's feelings, we likely end up hurting them anyway because we're not believed. So why endure the stress of trying to maintain a convincing lie in the first place? Autistic people deserve to have the same quality of life as anyone else. It's nothing short of scandalous that so many of us go through life unemployed, unloved and without friends for the want of a little understanding from other people. You cannot rely on simple signals to judge a person's character, especially if they're on the spectrum. If you know someone is autistic, try looking past their communication difficulties to the person beneath. Give them the chance to earn your trust and prove their honesty, rather than writing them off because they don't transmit the signals you expect to see and hear. Have some patience with their direct and often blunt communication, and you may well find you have a valuable, honest and reliable friend or colleague who will forever give you the truth and nothing but the truth. If you're autistic and you have trouble being believed, remember, you're not just autistic, because every day can be an Autistamatic day. Please like our videos, subscribe to our channel, and click the notification bell to be kept up to date with new content.